Okay, so now that you've learned all this information about skeletal muscle contraction and the whole processes and the whole anatomy and everything and all the moving parts, let's look at some clinical applications and some things that happen so you understand, like, why did you learn about all of this stuff? Okay, so first let's talk about, like, why do we need to warm up? Why do we need to cool down? Well, here's why you need to warm up before you exercise, because by warming up instead of just going full force into running 4 miles an hour, sorry, that's a walk, 4 miles an hour, instead of running 6 to 8 miles an hour, we're going by warming up by walking 4 miles an hour, we are going to increase our heart rate slowly. And that's going to increase the blood flow to the muscles. And by increasing the blood flow to the muscles, we increase the oxygen to the muscles. And so then we can increase our ATP production. And so then we can have lots of aerobic cellular respiration instead of making lactic acid. We're going to decrease the risk of muscle sprains or pulled muscles because our muscles are going to be nice and warmed. And our joint, remember what we learned about articulations, as our joints are being used, our synovial fluid thins out and is not nearly as viscous. So there's lots of reasons for warming up. Now, after we've exercised, it's just as important to stretch and cool down. Stretching after exercise increases the joint mobility. Stretching before exercises, okay, it's better than not stretching at all, but stretching after exercising is always a much better idea because the joints are warm, the synovial fluid is very thin and watery, so you have much better joint mobility, and so it will increase your range of motion. It is very important when you're doing your stretching to hold your stretches for 30 seconds to, work your way down to touching your toes and then hold them. Don't do the bouncing thing. You see lots of people trying to bounce back and forth and having gravity to help them get further. Don't do that. That's a way to injure your muscles and tear some tendons and ligaments. So cool down after exercising. Like we've all seen the Olympic athletes do that. They've just raced or they've just swum and like the microphone's in their face and they're like talking and then they'll say, excuse me, I need to go run some more laps or swim some more laps to cool down. And y'all going like, you're crazy. Why are you doing that? Well, because they still need an increased blood flow to remove whatever lactic acid is in their muscles. Because, like, the end of the race, they quit running, but those muscles are, they needed that extra blood flow. They needed the extra oxygen, okay, to remove the extra lactic acid that they need their lungs, the deep breaths to reverse oxygen depth. We're not going to be covering those concepts in this course, but if you're going to physical therapy or nursing, you would cover those in your physiology classes related to those majors. But for the rest of you, just for when you exercise for your own, please cool down and stretch after exercise and warm up before exercising. Okay, so if you go to the gym and work out, you should have heard about DOMS, which is an acronym for delayed onset muscle soreness. And if you haven't heard the acronym, you know that if you go to the gym and you do a good workout, you can leave and you feel like, oh, yeah, I feel that good workout. But then for most of us, sometime between 12 hours and 72 hours later, you have like this muscle pain or soreness or stiffness, and for all of us, it's usually at about a certain time. I know for me, it was always um like it was always like 24 hours later. Um, so whereas for my daughter, it was like and she was a college athlete, and for her, it was 36 hours later. So for her, if she did a morning workout, it would affect her, that gave her DOMS. It would affect her sleep pattern. Whereas for me, I could do evening workouts because it would affect my sleep pattern. So what happens is if you're doing your really hard workout at the time that you know the timing is going to give you DOMS, what you have done is you have created micro tears. So if you look normally, you can see in the middle of the eye band, the Z lines are all lined up beautifully here. Whereas, and these Z lines you can see are clearly abnormal. So these muscle fibers have had micro tears. So this has nothing to do with lactic acid and lactic acid buildup, which can give you the burn while you are exercising. So if you ever had a gym teacher and you say, "Oh, my calf muscle is burning while I'm exercising," and they said, "Work through the burn." Okay, don't, because that burn means you're doing lactic acid. So stop and breathe, do the warm up, and that will avoid that burn. This has nothing to do with this. This happens after the workout, and it's due to micro tears. And so your body is going to have an inflammatory reaction at the site of these micro tears. This is much more common from doing your contracting. Okay. So not doing your weight while flexing, but holding the weight while very slowly extending, muscle lengthening, or doing a lot of, like, for instance, if you're on the treadmill, running down hills or walking downstairs, slowly lowering massive weights. So a lot of people, when they do their weights, they do the slow going up and then they do this. Okay, you're not going to get DOMS from doing this, but you're going to get a much different workout from these slow lengthening, and that's much more likely to get you this delayed onset muscle soreness. So this inflammatory reaction gives you a lot of swelling and fluid, and it's going to take you several days to heal. And so this is why oftentimes when people who go to the gym and work out, but then they do a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon or run the marathon, it's kind of like, oh, for the rest of the week afterwards, it's kind of like, oh my God, my feet are killing me, my back is killing me, my arms hurt, because when you're running, you're doing your arms, and it's like, I just hurt so much, and it's because you have all these micro tears from using all those muscles that you didn't normally use in that, because those races tend to be on, not in the gym on flat surfaces like you're used to training, but on hills, going up and down hills in the cities. Okay. Next topic, Botox. We all know about Botox, living here in Los Angeles, where we pay people to inject poisons into our body. Don't understand this. Okay. Here on our forehead, classic place to have Botox injected. So what you're paying people to inject is a neurotoxin. And what this is a poison that prevents acetylcholine to being released into the synaptic cleft. Okay. So if acetylcholine can't be released into the synaptic cleft, then it cannot bind to its receptors on the sarcolemma. Then you cannot have a muscle impulse, which means then you can't have calcium being released to bind to troponin to pull the tropomyosin off, so that myosin can't bind to the actin. Therefore, there's no sliding filament, so there's no muscle contraction. So if you look here on the left, this is normal forehead muscle contractions, where you can see wrinkles on her forehead and wrinkles here between her eyebrows. And this is after she has paid to have Botox injected into her frontalis muscle and the muscle here between her eyebrows. And she's doing the same movements, and you can see it doesn't happen. Okay. Here's the thing, as you age, you have earned those wrinkles. Okay, be proud of them. It's not normal to be 60, 70, 80 years old not to have wrinkles on your forehead. You have earned those wrinkles. You have had a tough life. All right. So here's how Botox actually works. It's not sitting here in the synaptic cleft waiting, okay? What it happens is Botox goes into the axon terminal, okay? And normally what happens is we have that vesicle filled with acetylcholine, and for it to undergo exocytosis, that vesicle has to bind to a protein here on the phospholipid bilayer, and then it can undergo exocytosis. And what happens is this little yellow thing here is the Botox, and Botox binds to that protein instead. So when the vesicle with the acetylcholine comes along and wants to bind, some Botox goes, ha, 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 I'm here, you can't bind. So if the vesicle with acetylcholine can't bind, then it cannot release its contents into the synaptic vesicle. So there's no acetylcholine to bind to these receptors on the muscle. So there's no muscle contraction on the other side. And so that Botox sits there usually for about 4 to 6 weeks. Usually. At about 4 to 6 weeks, you will start getting the ability to contract these muscles back. Not always. So my mom, for her 50th wedding anniversary, decided she would get Botox. My mom now has one eyebrow that's higher than the other eyebrow because the Botox went away on one side and did go away on the other side. So think about this possible side effect because there's no guarantee that the neuromuscular junction function is going to recover on you either. All right. Next topic, tetanus. Were you like me, always told, don't walk around barefoot in the yard? You might step on a rusty nail. I don't know what people always thought, like rusty nails in the backyard. Okay, it has nothing to do with rusty nails, but the whole point was if you step on a rusty nail, you would have a puncture wound. Okay. So here's the thing, in the dirt everywhere, there is this organism known as Clostridium tetani. It grows in dirt, okay? So it has nothing to do with the rusty nail. The whole thing about a rusty nail is the rusty nail gives you a puncture wound. And so the thing with a puncture wound is if the rusty nail is in your backyard, it would have this organism on it. Why? Because this organism's in the dirt in your backyard. And then the puncture wound would carry this organism inside the bottom of your foot. You can get this from a freaking paper cut. Why? Because this dirt that's in your backyard is also inside your house. How do I know? Because you wear your shoes into your house, do you not? Yeah, okay. So maybe some of you take off your shoes at your front door. And maybe you have somebody who vacuums and sweeps, and maybe you don't have nearly as much Clostridium inside your house as the other person. Or maybe you're the type of person who likes to wear your shoes inside your house because maybe you're not quite as clean as other people. Odds are you've got this organism, and you can get it from a paper cut. You can get it from any kind of a cut at any time. The whole point is when you get a paper cut or you get a puncture wound, the surface is going to heal up within 24 hours. But the deep wound has trapped this organism deep. And this organism releases, isn't this organism kind of cute? Looks like a little tennis racket. I think it's kind of cute. But it releases a poison, an exotoxin. And this poison causes a continuous release of acetylcholine. And as we know, acetylcholine is going to cause a muscle impulse. And so this continuous release of acetylcholine, as long as you're breathing, is going to mean your muscles are going to contract and they're not going to relax. And you're going, whoo, that looks painful. Oh, my skeletal muscles are going to release. Well, skeletal muscle contraction right there, your big skeletal muscles, that's going to be mighty painful. But let's think for a second about your diaphragm muscle between your thorax and your abdomen, because that's the muscle that allows you to breathe. So when your diaphragm contracts, Your lungs expand and you can breathe. Okay. So let's all contract our diaphragms and inhale. Don't exhale. Now inhale again because we're contracting. Don't exhale. Inhale again. Don't exhale. Inhale again. Don't exhale. Do you see the problem? Without muscle relaxation? Yeah, we have a 40% mortality rate from tetanus. And this organism is in your house. Kind of makes you want to clean up today, doesn't it? How else can you keep from getting tetanus? Well, hopefully your mother was good to you when you were a child and you had your whole 3-shot series of tetanus, and you only need to have a booster every 10 years. Now, if it's been more than 10 years since you had your booster, you need to go back and have the whole series of 3 all over again. So do you have to wait 10 years? No. If it's been 8 years since you had your last booster and you catch yourself, go to the emergency, well, don't call it emergency, go to urgent care and say, I've cut myself. Here's my shot record. It's been 8 years. I would like my tetanus booster now, please. And they will give it to you because it's much better to get it at 8 years and know you're covered for another 10 than to get tetanus and have a 40% chance of dying. And yes, we do have people that die of tetanus. So that is a sad thing when we know it is preventable. So what you need to do is write yourself a note right now to go find your shot record and find out the last time you had your tetanus. So if you're young in your 20s and you don't have it, ask your mom. If she doesn't have it, find out who your pediatrician was and get it from them, because you were required to be up to date. You were required to have tetanus to get into grade school, and then they had to check it again at around your entry to high school. And that was middle school or high school was the last time your shot record was checked. But your pediatrician that you had then would have a copy of your shot record and they would give it to you. So as an adult, it's very important that you become responsible and you keep track of this for the rest of your life. Okay. Last topic, rigor mortis. Hopefully you've heard of this. Okay. As you all know, acetylcholine released into the clefts, calcium's released, binds to the troponin, pulls tropomyosin off, yada, yada, yada. Eventually we get muscle contraction. That's great. But when you're dead, we don't have blood flow. You don't have blood flow. You don't have oxygen. You don't have oxygen. You don't have cellular respiration. You don't have cellular respiration. You don't have 2 ATP. Okay. When you're dead long enough, you don't have any ATP. What happens if you don't have any ATP? Well, you had that cross bridge, right? That myosin head was inside the actin. You had that cross bridge. It needed a new ATP to come to break that cross bridge, right? So what happens? The muscles contracted. So, yep. That's what the little animal looks like. Okay, yeah, this isn't a real elephant. That's an elephant statue that fell over. But yes, this is somebody who shot himself with a rifle. And when he's found a few hours later, his arms are frozen up in there in this process called rigor mortis, the stiffness of death, because there's no muscle relaxation. Why? Because there's no ATP bind to break the cross bridges. Now, after about 24 to 36 hours, rigor mortis will go away. Why? Because with time, Proteins will denature. Phospholipid bilayers will start breaking down. The important one being the lysosome is going to rupture. What's inside lysosomes? If you don't remember, go back and learn it. Because you need to know this for this to know why rigor mortis goes away. Okay. That's all, folks. With that, we are done with the muscular system. Today was short. Thank you.